In 1644, a new regime reshaped the destiny of China. The Manchu conquerors seized Beijing and established the Qing Dynasty, ushering in an era of absolute control that would last for nearly 3 centuries. At the heart of this empire stood the Forbidden City, a symbol of imperial glory and power. But behind its vermilion walls and golden roofs lay a truth more disturbing than grand. Hidden deep inside was the Imperial Harem, a gilded prison that held thousands of women whose lives were determined not by their dreams or desires, but by the whims of a distant emperor. These women were selected from every corner of the empire, chosen for their beauty, intelligence, or political lineage. Many were just teenagers, some as young as 13, torn from their families, never to return. Once inside, they were stripped of their names, identities, and freedom. The harem was not a singular entity but a complex hierarchy. At its top stood the empress. Below her, 7 descending ranks classified every woman according to her potential value to the emperor. A woman's rank dictated where she lived, what she ate, and how she was treated. But more than anything, it determined whether she would ever be noticed at all. Entry into the Forbidden City was brutal. Girls were forced to undergo invasive physical examinations conducted by eunuchs. Their bodies were measured, their teeth counted, their breath sniffed, their skin scrutinized for the slightest imperfection. Those who passed were subjected to months of indoctrination, trained to walk, speak, bow, and breathe in the manner required by palace protocol. They learned to silence themselves, to erase any sign of individuality. They were told that the greatest virtue was obedience and the highest goal was to be chosen for a night with the emperor. Thus began their waiting. Endless, aching, soul-shattering waiting. In the Imperial Harem, a woman's worth was ultimately reduced to one single role, to serve the emperor sexually when summoned. But even this role was not romantic or personal. It was institutionalized, regulated, cold. Each night, eunuchs brought out a silver tray holding small wooden plaques, each engraved with the name of a concubine. The emperor, like selecting a dish from a menu, would flip one plaque to choose his companion for the night. The chosen woman had no right of refusal. Once her name was selected, a humiliating ritual began. She was taken to a preparation chamber where female attendants and eunuchs stripped her completely naked. Every piece of jewelry, every trace of individuality was removed. She was wrapped tightly in a yellow silk blanket that restricted her movement. Then, carried like a parcel on the back of a eunuch, she was transported through the palace's shadowy corridors. Her journey was through checkpoints and guard posts where her identity was verified and documented. Upon arrival at the emperor's bedchamber, she was placed at the foot of the bed. Not beside it, not at its head, always at the foot. There, she would unwrap herself and begin the crawl. Yes, crawl, on hands and knees, eyes lowered, in total silence. This was not optional. It was protocol. The crawl was symbolic. A reenactment of submission, of surrender, of powerlessness. The emperor might observe her silently, inspecting her form as she approached. Records mention that the crawl had to last the exact length of time it took a stick of incense to burn. Too fast, and she was presumptuous. Too slow, and she was unwilling. Either misstep brought punishment. During the encounter, the woman was to remain completely silent. No cries, no words, no pleasure, no pain. Her body belonged to the emperor, but her voice did not. She could not touch him without command. She could not move to ease discomfort. Even her breathing was measured. Eunuchs waited just outside the room, keeping time with water clocks. This was not sex. It was state-sanctioned consumption. The degradation did not end after the act. As soon as the emperor finished, eunuchs re-entered the room. They questioned the woman, but the most critical question was reserved for the emperor himself. Should the dragon's seed be preserved? That one decision would determine whether the woman might become a mother, or whether her body would be violated yet again. If the emperor did not wish for pregnancy, Eunuchs performed forced expulsions to remove the semen from the woman's body. These procedures, as recorded in imperial archives, were anything but gentle. Eunuchs would press violently on her abdomen, punch her lower back, or even use wooden tools to force the fluids out. In some cases, they jumped on the woman's stomach. These treatments caused bruising, internal bleeding, and in many cases, permanent infertility. Worse still, some eunuchs used these moments to abuse the women sexually. Knowing the concubines were already naked and helpless, some eunuchs, supposedly castrated and harmless, took advantage of them. The victims could not report these crimes. Speaking out meant disgrace or death. Women who resisted these procedures were severely punished. Some were banished to the Cold Palace, a remote wing of the Forbidden City where disgraced concubines were left to wither in isolation. There was no fire for warmth in the winter. No proper food. No visitors. Many went mad from loneliness. Others took their own lives. And still others lived for years in complete silence, ghosts with beating hearts. For those who defied imperial fertility control, such as hiding pregnancies or seeking unauthorized conception, the punishments were grotesque. The death of 1,000 cuts. The wooden donkey. Strangulation by silk scarf. These were not myths. These were procedures recorded in palace records. Women did not merely serve at the emperor's pleasure. They were bred, broken, and buried, if not in soil, then in the silence of fear. Ironically, the same act that humiliated and violated them could also become a woman's only path to power. Pregnancy, especially with a male heir, was a ticket out of obscurity. This hope kept many women compliant, or even eager for selection. But it also turned the harem into a battlefield. Some concubines bribed eunuchs to skip or sabotage the post-encounter expulsions. Others pretended to be pregnant to delay being summoned again. Some faked virgin bleeding with chicken blood or menstrual blood in hopes of gaining the emperor's favor. The competition for fertility was ruthless. Concubines would steal each other's menstrual markers, gold rings, flower pins, or red symbols meant to signal unavailability. They sabotaged rivals by reporting false information to eunuchs, hoping their opponents would be selected during unsafe times. The pressure drove many to dangerous extremes. Some starved themselves to suppress ovulation. Others consumed toxic herbs to control their cycles. The desire to conceive, and the fear of doing so at the wrong time, became a permanent psychological burden. When a woman did conceive, her life changed. But not for the better. She was isolated for her own protection, placed under constant surveillance. Her meals were tested for poison. Her rooms were guarded, yet even these protections were prisons. She could not trust anyone. Poisonings were common. Rivals would bribe maids to slip dangerous substances into her food. Sharp objects would be hidden in her bedding. A single fall could end her pregnancy, and her relevance. And if the child was born female, celebration turned to silence. Boys were future heirs. Girls were forgettable. The concubine's value rose or vanished in an instant. And even successful mothers were separated from their babies. Wed nurses and tutors raised the children. Maternal bonding was discouraged. The emperor did not want emotional attachments clouding his authority. The women watched their children grow up from a distance, known, but never truly embraced. Part 5. Living Shadows and Forgotten Names. Time in the harem was both fast and slow. A woman might age out of favor by her late 20s, labeled too old to please the emperor. Yet she could live on for decades in silent irrelevance. These aging concubines became ghostly figures in the palace, technically alive, but long forgotten. Some found purpose in training younger women. Others turned to religion or opium for escape. A few chronicled their pain in secret diaries hidden in walls or sewn into robes. But most took their suffering to the grave. When the Qing dynasty finally collapsed in 1912, journalists and reformers gained access to the Forbidden City for the first time. What they found shocked the nation. Women who hadn't left the compound in 50 years. Women who flinched at the sound of footsteps. Women who spoke in whispers out of habit. When told they were free, many had nowhere to go. Their families were dead. Their hometowns forgotten. Their very identities erased by years of service to an emperor who no longer existed. Testimonies gathered from these survivors painted a picture of institutionalized cruelty far more horrific than legend had ever told. The silence, the crawling, the forced abortions. These were not occasional atrocities. They were protocol. Historians later uncovered mountains of documentation. Ledgers detailing every concubine's name, age, rank, cycle, and sexual history. Medical records chronicling the damage caused by forced expulsions. Financial accounts showing bribes paid by concubines to corrupt eunuchs. It was all there, preserved in meticulous brush strokes. The imperial harem was not merely a site of personal suffering. It was a machinery of sexual slavery, psychological torment, and systemic
control. Every brick of the Forbidden City bore witness, and the world, finally, was allowed to listen.
You've just witnessed one of the darkest punishments in history. But many more still lurk in the shadows. So if you dare, subscribe to Torture Vault, where every scream from the past still echoes.